Thank you very much for the opportunity to share with you what we have done down in Chihuahua, Mexico. Who likes tequila? Well, I brought some bottles. I like tequila as well, and mezcal. It's coming from this plant, agave. But there's a little bit of an issue because we are creating blue deserts in central Mexico. The way we actually plant and treat the agave, we're actually sealing the soils, compacted soils, a lot of land degradation. So we were called about 2 years ago to help some guys who really wanted to do things different in the center. I mean, I'm not yet there in the Chihuahuan desert. I'm in central Mexico, where most of the agave is grown. So I want to show you the power of livestock, the power of the biology, what we do, what happens when we bring biology through livestock. So you're seeing a very typical 99% agave production. Another view. Remember, this picture was taken during the summer. They got about 30 inches of rain per year. But because they only want to see agave, I mean, all the rain just ran off. But then what we did there, we integrate livestock. So that is the same picture, but this is where we integrate livestock for a couple of years, and the other parcel is a neighboring property. Same day, the picture was taken the same day. So wondering what kind of tequila or mezcal we want to drink, right? And then you see how nature responds when you stop using chemicals, when you stop you start seeing all kinds of predators, insects are going to help with the pests. So on that case, that client, I told the client, it's better to use multiple grazing species. And then he went full-fledged. He put donkeys, horses, and sheep. And he has been getting amazing results. But he was actually very intentional on his approach, because we always tell people we need to see our ranches or land as a lab, as a laboratory. If I tell you that something that I believe works, and then you say, well, it may not work, well, do your trials. So this is the kind of person that actually in a couple of years make a big transformation. And now that person, the original idea for him was to actually sell the agave, but now he came up with a bottle of tequila, which is going to be the first regen tequila in the world. So that's pretty cool. Now let's go to our context, which is in the Chihuahuan Desert. Chihuahua neighbors New Mexico and Texas. That's where we ranch. So if you think about the Chihuahuan Desert, this is how you think about it. This is like a video nearby my ranch where you can see that the land has been degraded, has been eroded, is unproductive, is lifeless. I mean, it doesn't really produce much at all. But then the question is, was the land always that way? Or it was different, let's say 100, 200, 300, 400 years ago? If you see that gully that is on my way to the ranch, you can see there, I don't know if there's a pointer here. Oh yeah, good. This layer of carbon. Imagine we created this gully with just 9 inches of precipitation. But what about this carbon that is there? Was it mesquite? Was a woody plant? Was an annual grass? Or was a tall perennial grass? This land used to have tall perennial grasses. And this is kind of a evidence that how it used to be. But there's also a written evidence, like that expedition of these Spanish priests back in 1776, trying to find a path from Santa Fe, New Mexico to Monterey, California. So obviously they went through the Four Corners and all that area, and they passed by Salt Lake. And they said that they had never seen such a pristine, lush grasslands. So there's like the visual evidence, but there's also the written evidence. Because sometimes we got into saying, oh, but this is a desert. Why in the world you want your cows to break that biocrust? Well, biocrust for me is like the last chance for nature to keep things going on. But in reality, it wasn't really a desert the way we see it. So, well, I'm not sure if they told you that this is going to be, is included in your price, a crash course of Spanish. So, coming back even more recently, in the 1950s, there was a statistical map of our state. And then it says that it has a nice climate, but also, this is the interesting thing, all kinds of wildlife. We actually used to have in Chihuahua, the last Mexican wolves were captured there in the 1970s. Even the grizzly bears stayed there until the 1970s. So it was a paradise for wildlife. But what really grabbed my attention there is the otters and beavers. Because remember, when we start degrading land, the first thing that goes away is everything related to water, because we break the water cycle. So otters and beavers all across the state. Actually, recently, they find some otters on the top of the mountain range in Chihuahua. So this is, now let's go into our ranch, the Las Damas Ranch. That is when it rains, which is not very often, and that is when it snows. It snows. When I was a kid, it used to snow every year. Now it snows every other year. So we cannot rely anymore on the snow. And this is a rainfall pattern. Like the monsoon, that's what we can rely on. Unfortunately, the last 2 years have been very dry, and we only got like 3 and 4 inches. That's it. That's why we are very conservative in our management to actually stockpile or make a reserve of grass for dry periods. When I joined the ranch, my dad, it's been over 15 years ago, my dad has a nice present for me. 20 inches, we got 20 inches of rain. You know what we did with 20 inches? Nothing. Because the soils were so compacted, it destroyed a lot of things, break dams and things like that. So it's really not how much water you get, but how much water you keep, which Alan Server defined that as effective rainfall. I think they did a study in Colorado when you were running out of water. I don't know when, that was a few years, right, ago? Well, today maybe. And I think you're only infiltrating about 40%. We're not far from that in Chihuahua. We're only infiltrating probably not even 40%. So if I'm in an area of 9 inches, actually, effectively, I'm only in an area of 3.5 inches. That is a big problem because we're not actually utilizing the water. And unfortunately, in our state, and this is a graph in my ranch, the rainfall pattern is just going down. So we really couldn't get into doing the things the same way that was done by my great and my grandfather and my father, because we don't have the same conditions. We're getting less rain. So how do we transform that very arid places into grasslands? Obviously, it was with animal impact. That is a drone running on top of our herd when we're moving the herd. So that's what we really need. We need all the tools from the livestock. And I don't want to refer only to cows, because in my herd, we have cattle, but we also run the horses, and we have donkeys as well, and sheep as well. Because if we're trying to mimic nature, why are we just using one kind of animals? I mean, nature doesn't use just one, like elk or bison, or, I mean, it has diversity to work better the land. So that's what we've been able to do. Remember, we haven't really burned anything. We haven't really put any seed, anything. We are not irrigating. So we've been able to get those grasses back that were dormant. Now, many people ask me, okay, do you need to have that seed bank on the soil? Yes and no, because if you create the conditions through animal impact, and when we say animal impact, it's like a mob, it's like a herd trying to mimic what the bison used to do, but also with all the tools that the livestock provides, like the manure, the urine, the hoof impact, even the saliva. And then you create the conditions for nature to say, okay, this seed that is there dormant, now you create the conditions, you improve the water cycle, and then that seed is going to germinate. Now, obviously, we did not go from bare ground to a 6 or 7 feet tall grasses. There's no way to do that. There's no purpose for me to grab that seed. Like a friend of mine went to the ranch, and then he saw those grasses, and then he started putting the seeds on his pockets. And then I told him, I was just teasing him, said, you know, that was pretty expensive seed that I bought. Can I get some? Yeah, no problem. But we're dreaming, folks, if we think that we're going to get excellent seed and put it in soil. It's going to be lost because we haven't created the condition for the seed to germinate. And remember, we as ranchers, we are striving to get a perennial-based system. I mean, I actually go to many states in the western U.S., and most of the cattle rancher is done on annual grasses. I mean, I'm not even talking about irrigated. I'm talking about pasture land or range land. So when you have annual grasses, like I have seen a lot that in California, you have to supplement for many months because there's nothing green. I mean, cattle need to eat something green to thrive year-round without or minimal supplementation. So what I'm trying to tell you here is that we cannot actually go from bare ground to perennials. We have to respect the natural succession of going from bare ground and then animal impact, and then you start seeing annuals that you may not like thistle, right? Why? Why thistle? Because of the taproot system. I mean, our soils in most of the cases are compacted. And what nature determines that you need thistle at this time of the succession, or other weeds, and then annual grasses, and then perennials, and then better perennials. So that's how you start actually fixing the water cycle, and you're gonna have better plants. So these were our winters, folks, before we actually start doing this holistic, rational, regenerative grazing. Obviously, we have to feed the cows there for months because the grass was oxidized. I mean, if you think about the colors we want to see yellow and green. We don't want to see gray because gray has been lost. I mean, it has been oxidized. And I want to share something with you folks. We always talk about overgrazing, but in a lot of the western U.S. and mostly on the southwest, a lot of degradation is happening because of the lack of animal impact. You go and you drive through southern Colorado, New Mexico, Arizona, and there's a lot of grasses that are completely oxidized. That idea from the government to say, yeah, let's convert it to the grasslands, but you cannot touch it for 10 years, I think that's a pretty bad idea. I mean, you're willing to be there and you say, well, the grass is ready to be grazed, let's graze it. Because I have seen places where they have actually seeded those grasses, those grasses came really nice, but then they don't graze it, and then you go after 5-10 years and they're all oxidized. So those were winters. Now these are winters, folks. Well, I work with a lot of bird conservancy organizations. We are like a refuge for birds coming from Montana, Dakotas, and so on. Actually, they pass through Colorado, but the flatland. And when I got the beginning, I was working with them. They told me, you know, we need to get rid of this creosote because it's preventing the grass from growing. And I understand that point, but I don't think we are taking into account the powerful, the power of livestock to bring biology. So once you start making impact there, then you can grow grass. Even if the book says you can't. I think the good thing about here is that the grass never read the books. Right? So here the message is war for what you want, because we spend so much money fighting nature. Let's get rid of the thistle, let's get rid of the juniper, let's get rid of the creosote, let's get rid of that, because it's invading my property. Well, the only problem is us, folks, or management. I have to highlight that. Look at this fence. The bottom part is my ranch. It's spring after 10 months of no rain. Why? Because the rainfall that we got during monsoon, it was stored in the soil. So it allows the grass to green up. And the other side of the fence is one of my neighbors. Still dormant. Now, I took the same picture in summer, and then the right side is my ranch, and the left side is the same neighboring ranch. Now, we have a little bit of an issue with some institutions saying, looking at this, and saying, oh, you have too many cattle. You have to lower the stocking rate. It's more how you manage that livestock than anything else. Because in reality, I feel that a lot of ranchland in the West, they don't have enough cattle. Even if the ranchers know how to do this, they will not have enough cattle. So here, I'm running 3 times more cattle than my neighbor. But my neighbor has the cattle just too spread too thin. I mean, they don't have this just like herd effect. Look at this picture taken the same day. There's grass. I mean, I'm not discussing that point, but this is one of my neighbors and this is my ranch on the same day. No irrigation, folks. So here we're still praying for rain. And here we're okay. I think we're able that if we get 5 inches on the right time, we're fine. We don't have to stock. We don't have to sell any cattle. That's how resilient this has been for us. So I was telling you about the natural succession that we need to respect, so we need to be a little bit patient on that. And this is a picture that actually I took on with the same reference. So you see this pasture that is bare ground, a little bit of weeds, and then we put the cattle, we apply animal impact there. Then in 3 years, we start seeing weeds. I mean, we have seen weeds like the pig. I don't know if you're familiar with the pigweed. Pigweed? Well, there's places at the ranch where we have applied animal impact that the pigweeds are like, well, I'm riding my horse like this, and like this thick. And I was concerned, I want to be honest with you, I was concerned saying, wow, because we have such a long rest periods that we return like in 18 months, between 12 and 18 months to the same pasture, that I said, wow, what's going to happen here? Well, nature responded that way, saying, okay, you have good soils, you make animal impact, you need pigweed at this time. Because remember, every weed will solve a particular issue. And then we were like kilometers, miles, like walking through that pigweed. And then the cows came, they broke all that stuff, so it looked like a cover crop. But imagine the root system of a plant like this. I mean, huge. The next year, no more pigweeds. So don't be concerned about, oh, because if I let that weed put seeds, it's gonna spread all over my ranch. No, if you change the conditions, the seeds are gonna be there. It's just that depending on what you're doing, that's what is going to germinate. So 3 years after that, then we had the grasses. Some of them are annuals, some perennials, but that's how powerful livestock could be to regenerate the desert, pretty much. Let me keep going here. So this is a typical view of a property nearby mine where nobody is really making money, actually, because of probably they lack a lot to have cattle, but they're losing money and they keep feeding those cows and having less and less cows. This is what I was trying to tell you about the oxidation. We don't want to see gray grass, but in order for us to see gray grass, not to see gray grass, we really need to bring animal impact. Either they step over that, break it, or eat it. Now, to be honest with you, and remember that I have two kinds of neighbors, the ones that think that I'm crazy and the ones that know that I'm crazy. So when I started my ranch, it looked like that. And knowing what I know today, you know what I would have done? Buy a bunch of donkeys. Because donkeys, for me, is the ultimate way to restore a lot of land that is like that. Because they can eat probably even paper. And cows are way more selective. So look at this I-25 in New Mexico. Obviously, this was overgrazed, but this is overrested. I mean, it's as bad as overresting areas than is as not having any animal impact. The end result is there's no photosynthesis. So if there's no photosynthesis, there's no life in the soil, and there will be no infiltration because there will not be aggregation and so on. So one thing that we need to be aware of, folks, is if a rancher tells me, you know, we're about the same as 10 years ago, I think you're lying to me. Because we are working with an environment that has so many variables that is in constant movement. So most likely, you're going forward or you're going backwards, but you don't stay on the same spot. And let's talk about this in terms of diversity. There's a verse in the Bible that says, the promised land of milk and honey. And I was thinking about that. And I say, what does that mean? Well, what do you need to produce milk and honey? And I want to be honest with you, I don't want to be a grass farmer anymore. I would prefer to be a forb farmer. Because I understand now that the grasses are a way to actually fix the water cycle. And once you fix the water cycle with the grasses, then nature is going to reward you with forbs. And if you have tested the bricks on your grasses and you happen to have forbs, like these herbs, right, with flowers, forbs will always beat grasses in terms of sugar and protein. But in order for you to have more forbs, you need a better water cycle. So here it's just grasses, but look, where we have established a good thick of perennial grasslands, now we're getting the forbs. And that is going to get the cow's fat that will produce more milk. And not only that, you're going to have a bunch of flowers that will help you produce honey. I mean, the bees will stop relying on mesquite or these woody plants. There will be a tremendous amount of flowers in your grasses. That's how I want to see my grasslands. Full of flowers and life, and grasses, and so on. Actually, I had the opportunity to listen to Christine Jones. I don't know if you have heard Christine Jones, an Australian soil scientist. And she said that North America grasslands were really forblands. So we talk about the diversity of livestock as well. So we are using a certain percentage of our livestock is donkeys. Some people ask me, well, what do you do with the donkeys? Do you eat donkeys in Mexico? I say, yes. We don't know, but yes. We're not aware, but yes. So see how these crazy donkeys are. They even eat that ocotillo. So let me explain to you some of the visual indicators that we have at the ranch. So one is what we call the leaf to stem ratio. This picture was also taken on the same day in winter, different management. This is my ranch and this is a neighboring ranch. Unfortunately, when I go to ranches in the western US, we mostly have stems but very, very little leaves. And this is the same grass. Actually, I was kind of teasing some experts on grasses and I asked them, can you tell me what kind of grasses are these? And they say, well, yeah, this is tobosa. How about this? Well, we have never seen it. Well, it's tobosa, but under different grazing management. So why do you think that this grass has more leaves with animal impact and the correct rest periods? Because the microherd, which is a microbiology for us ranchers, right, is growing. So it's going to tell the plant, hey, you better change your form to have bigger panels. So you need to grow more leaves because we're more, so you need to do more photosynthesis because there's a bigger population here of us under it. That's why the grasses start changing their form to be more leafy and less stems. And then I was able to pull that oxidized grass with my hands because those are perennial grasses that are struggling to survive. I mean, the perennial grasses are struggling to survive because there's not enough or not correct animal impact mimicking nature. The root system is like an annual grass. So you have in a lot of places perennials that are behaving like annuals. And they're not helping us to actually make our business more profitable because then they shut down and then there's no green for 6 months. It doesn't, remember, plants don't feel the temperature like we do. And you may say, well, yes, Alex, but in Mexico it's like, kind of hot and tropical. And what reality, folks, is that it doesn't matter where you are. In North Dakota with Gay Brown, he was able to have a little bit of green at the bottom. In our context, very dry, a little bit extreme weather, we also are able now to extend the green season and have green grass at the bottom during winter or the non-growing season. That is the idea. The idea is to extend the green season in such a way that we as ranchers, we don't have to supplement or expend a lot of money, but also we keep feeding the microbiology year-round. The other is the refractometer to measure the bricks. So look at what happened when we increase the soil biology, the bricks go higher, and then we as ranchers can produce more pounds per animal, or more milk and so on. Now, this is a brief example of how we actually do the paddocks. We use a lot of electric fence, like permanent, but we also use polywire, which is a temporal electric fence. So depending on what we see in front of us, like we never change the time. We move daily or twice a day. So what we're doing is, depending on what we see in front of us, we size the paddock depending on what the cows need for one day. If it is a drought, we're gonna make it bigger. If it is a rainy season, we're gonna make it smaller. In Australia, someone asked me, okay, so what do you do in a drought? Do you leave more grass behind? No, I'm not. It's the cows leaving more grass behind. We don't force our cows to eat what they don't want. So look at this. The livestock already grazed this spot. Then we take down the polywire, and then you can see now they get into this new paddock. And those paddocks are very small because there's a lot of forage. So really, our flexibility is on the size of the paddock, depending on the conditions, the time of the year, and so on. How about the woody encroachment? Oh my God, I touched so many of these topics with our ranchers, and we have our way of dealing with this wood encroachment. Actually, we all here are helping with the wood encroachment because those are tax dollars that are spent there. So what we have seen is if we can grow thick, healthy grasslands, they'll take care of all the invasive species. Like right now, we are actually, the creosote is going away. It's one of the woody plants we have there. Even all the woody plants, including the mesquite, they are actually being killed by the grasslands. Now you may be wondering, are you going to end up with just grasslands? Well, no. But what happened is that the original woody plants or trees are going to take longer to actually grow and come up. Why? Because the ones that used to be there, they're gone because they were depending on the grasslands. If you go to that part in Texas, near Fredericksburg and Austin and San Antonio, those areas used to be only grasslands and oaks. Now you can see that they are having now cactus, mesquite, bushes with thorns, and so on. And now you can see, if you pay attention, how the oaks are dying. Why? Because we don't have the grasslands, the perennial-based, beautiful grasslands that they used to have there. So fortunately, we spend a lot of millions fighting these invasive species because they grow only on compacted soils. So even bigger mesquites and huge mesquites are dying because nature determined you don't need the mesquite anymore. It's gone. I mean, the purpose behind the mesquite is done. It's a legume, was put in nitrogen. You don't need it anymore because a healthy grass can also put nitrogen into the soil. How about fires? That's also a very controversial topic and a big problem in the western US. I live that when I travel during the fires across the US, a lot of smoke everywhere. But there's a study from NASA, actually in California, where they directly related the number of fires, natural fires, to the dryness or the moisture in the soil. The drier the soil, the more fires you're gonna get. And it's not pines the ones that are going to keep the soil moisture. It's grasslands. And it's not through rewilding. I think we need to intervene and use livestock as our tool to actually get that forest back into having more moisture, and then that's the way we're going to prevent fires. It's not removing the fire fuel. Actually, that's why our forests in the US is so thick. You know, you can't even walk there. There's so many, a lot of these pine trees. I got a friend who actually is doing this kind of good grazing on the very top, not the very top, but on the high mountain range in Chihuahua. He got snow every year. He pretty much got all the same evergreens you have here, including obviously the ponderosa. So that's his ranch in winter. Snow doesn't stop with the wall, okay? That's his ranch. And look at the kind of grasses. This is how we want to see our forests. Pine trees and then grasslands as well. But when we walk our forests, what we usually see? Too many pines and bare ground. Look at what's going on here. He was getting invaded by junipers. Now, he's killing junipers with the grasses, because junipers have no place. At least he's about 8,000 feet. There's no place for a juniper at that elevation, so he's controlling the juniper through grasses as well. Two extremes. I'm at the bottom, he's high ground. We are controlling invasive species to grasslands. Well, I didn't say this quote. It's actually from the early 1900s of extension agent from NRCS. Don't pray for rain if you don't know what to do with it. I was actually in a convention in India, and I'm always trying to promote this grazing management. But imagine with the scientific community that you're a rancher, and they may say, well, what are you doing here? You're destroying the world. But it's actually, it's not the cow itself, it's how you manage the cow. So if we see it in a holistic way, what we do, and we run an infiltration test, let's say in my context, on bare ground, we are able to infiltrate only 2 inches of rain per hour on compacted soil, bare ground. But where we've been doing this more rational, holistic management, we're able to infiltrate 18 inches per hour. If we actually extrapolate that difference and multiply it by our 30,000 acre ranch, we could meet the water needs for 100,000 people for a full year. So that is a very important thing, because when I met this delegation from Germany, the first thing they told me is, we don't want to talk to you because it takes this many liters to produce 1 kilo of meat. Well, we need to see it a more holistic way, this way. And then the other thing we have seen is that this is not my ranch, but it's a nearby ranch that obviously this is having a good grazing management. This is very continuous grazing. We have experienced an increase on rainfall, let's say 10%, and that really means a lot in the desert. 10% for us is 1 more inch. So we could affect the microclimate. A lot of people ask me like, okay, but how many acres? Well, I don't really know. And then you will be affected also by the whole context, right? But we can actually have the power to change a lot of things, not only effective rainfall, but also be able to pull more rain. Because if we don't have vegetation, you will get less and less and less rain. And then probably you have seen this example where this is another friend of mine who sent me these pictures from West Texas. And he said, well, Alex, I don't understand this because we've been working very good on covering the soil with grasses, and the neighbor is very continuous grazing, but he's getting all this snow. Well, the point here, folks, is that because we have the soil temps more consistent across the year, yeah, they will be cooler in summer, but they will be warmer in winter. So he actually got more snow, but the snow melted much faster. Who else is trying to help us with this regeneration? What do you think about that cow pie? Tasty? I got one rancher who actually tastes to see how good the livestock is doing. Or the bison, he has bison. But he told me that he lost that sense after COVID, but I don't know. He doesn't want to share the cake. Well, there's a big problem with that. And I want to be honest with you. I took that picture on a ranch run by conservationists. Bison. How come in the world we're putting ivermectin on bison? That doesn't make sense to me. So what happened here, remember, we don't want to see the gray color. This is great. This has been oxidized. And then you take a look at underneath, and there's nothing. So I don't like that cow pie because he wasn't really taking advantage of that fertility. It was oxidized because they use ivermectin. So we want to have some life on that. We gotta stop killing the soil engineers. This is the kind of activity we have in my ranch. A lot of activity with the dung beetles. This is the kind of work the dung beetles do on a side view. They put the majority of the cow pie into the soil. So if you have the right conditions like the temperature and also the moisture in the soil, then in 3 days you will not see a single cow pie on the pastures. So if we don't really have that activity, we as ranchers are losing a huge opportunity to improve. I think we're at about 50% of the outcome that we could actually get. This used to be a cow pie. See, it creates a little microclimate. I call these my small donkeys, termites. Probably you don't want to see them in your house, but they do great things. Now, well, let me go back a little bit here, because some people say that, yeah, but you're in a warmer climate. Well, Gay Brown, son, Paul, he did a study on dung beetles when he was single, still had time. And he found more than 25 dung beetles in North Dakota. I don't think Colorado is called that North Dakota. So there's more than 400 different dung beetles in the States. It's just we need to create the conditions, and obviously we need to stop killing them to do the work. So what do? The termites? They actually finish the work of the dung beetles. They take all these larger stems and then they put it into the soil. So at the end of the day, there's nothing left. You can see this example. The grass killed the mesquite. Then there were some pruner beetles, not dung beetles, taking the branches down, and then the termites took those branches and put it into the soil. And then you need to keep in mind that these termites are actually putting nitrogen into the soil because they have a lot of nitrogen-fixed bacteria in their tummies. They even are taking down oxidized grass. Now, how about rewilding? There's this big concept of rewilding, which, well, I personally don't think we will do much with it because we don't have the same conditions. We have a lot of fragmentation, highways, fences. So what we have seen at the ranch is a lot of increase in wildlife population. We have created the habitat that used to be there before, so we have seen a lot of increase on everything, including actually desert box tortoise, which is pretty cool because they relate to water. But also, we work with the Bird Conservancy of the Rockies, and they installed recently a tracking station. Now we can actually prove that all these birds coming from Montana, the Dakotas, and so on, go to my ranch. And I was checking at the station, and we have the largest number of endangered and listed birds south of the border. So it's pretty exciting because now we have the hard data to prove it, that what is good for the cow is good for the wildlife. Well, just to finish with this, remember, this video actually shows you a lot of grasslands in my ranch, but they used to be bare ground. If we met like in an elevator, and then you ask me, so what do you do? Well, we mimic nature to actually promote life. But it's not only life that we, at the ranch, actually it will extend our own life. I think we were born to see beautiful things. This is my dad. When my mentor came to my ranch the first time, it was all degraded. And he told me, Alex, well, because I'm Alex in Mexico and Alejandro here in the US. You have thought about increasing the cattle numbers and but you haven't thought about something. When you do this, it's gonna give more years of life to your dad. He's 92. And he's excited about the ranch, going to the ranch. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Alejandro. We're going to keep you right up here. If we could have our exhibitors come up over this area here to line up for introductions, and we're going to do a couple questions. Failed to mention, that Poll EV website is where you can put your questions in, and we'll try to get as many as we can. So, Colin, we want to go put ahead the first question on the screen, and Alejandro, if you just want to read and answer, that'd be great.
Okay, sounds good. Okay. Hello. Is it working? Yeah.
Okay, I'll read the first question. In the early days of introducing livestock to desertified lands that are devoid of vegetation, how do the animals have enough to eat?
Yeah, usually most rangelands still have some grass somewhere, usually where there's no water, because the cattle cannot reach those places, and that's where we start working. I think we made the mistake that start working on the most degraded part, but now our recommendation is for the ranchers to show us the best spots. Ideally, would have water already, but then that's where we start. And then you have to recognize that the degraded land will still going down. But for us, the important thing is for the rancher to see something next year. So we can save the rancher first, and then we save the world. But in very extreme cases, we have used bale grazing, like bales to start the process. Yep. Mm-hmm. Oh, do you believe there's, yeah, go ahead.
Do you believe there is a certain minimum size of land for this to work?
No, I don't think there's a minimum size. It really, you need to, depending on the size and the context, you will select for the kind of animal. I mean, we can start from chickens to sheep, goats, cattle, and so on. So really depending on the size of the land and the context, then you're gonna choose the kind of animal. Yeah.
What has been your most effective strategy in helping ranchers with their aha moment to move them to adopt change? What indicator is most effective?
Well, we ranchers are very practical people, and we can talk for days and days and days, but reality, they need to see something. Either one way is they go to my ranch and they say, well, it doesn't look like a desert. But I think one of the peculiar things of my ranch is that it's like an island of grass in the middle of nowhere. So they say, well, it could be done. The other thing is when we go and visit a rancher, advising a rancher, then we ask the rancher to show us the best spots, the more biodiverse, a little bit advantage of like a meadow or riparian. And then, because the ranchers always ask you, so what should I do tomorrow? Okay, well, let's take a little bit of that piece of that riparian area or that meadow or that good, and then you're gonna intensify your grazing, like daily moves, no back fence to the water, and then protect that area for a full year. And that has been many times enough, even with just one visit, for the rancher to realize, wow, this really works. I want to extend it from my best low-hanging fruit areas to the worst. Yeah.
Have you seen buffalo in this grassland transformation? If yes, how are fences used?
Yeah, we have consulted with bison owners, and I think what really makes a difference with bison is who's doing the work. Is he intentional on trying to put the bison? I have seen cases where the guy was really willing to make it work, very intentional, and after a year, he was controlling the bison with just one electric fence, one wire. I mean, our cows were pretty wild as well, probably wilder than a bison. But we kind of fail, and then, okay, again and again. And probably we identified 2 or 3 cows that were breaking, then we sell them, and then we keep going. So yeah, I mean, don't think that nature is really very complex. We want to keep this business simple, because they say, the cattle business is a simple business. The challenge is to keep it simple. But yeah, it's more the intentional. But yeah, bison are really great. I mean, bison. I would be using bison, but the bison is protected in Mexico, so you cannot sell it, you cannot hunt it. It became a really political thing. Yeah.
Does bringing biodiversity back to these lands also come with bringing more predators near the herds?
Yeah, I mean, definitely you will have more predators, but we are able to deal with, like in my case, which is not different than yours probably, we have the mountain lions, bobcats, coyotes. Actually, they reintroduced the Mexican wolf. So we have all those predators, but I think the best way we have to deal with those predators is actually the herd. Mountain lions may take 1 or 2 animals every other year. That's fine, they came first, right? We gotta pay some rent. And also the long rest periods. Like we have a few families of coyotes, and they are territorial, they don't mess with each other. So we know that in this area they had this, and then because we have long rest periods, we force the coyotes to learn to hunt wildlife, because we're gonna see that family in a year. So that instead of just having the cows all over, always there, well, yeah. So we can actually minimize the predator. I tell people I raise the mountain lions and they go and hunt my neighbor's cows. Yeah.
Okay, last question for now. When you were restoring your ranch, how much of the restoration was active? Like, were you going into the land and fertilizing or planting?
Okay, hold on. Active. Oh, active, that means active? Okay. No, I mean, no seeding, no fertilizing. Well, yeah, we fertilize with the cows. The only tool we used was the livestock. Now we started with just only cows, and then we added, we put the horses together, we put the donkeys, because there's a pretty good article that talks about the benefits. You should consider donkeys as a cover crop. Like, many farmers says, I don't want to put cover crops because it's gonna take my water. Okay, I don't want to put donkeys because it's gonna eat the grass for the cows. It's kind of similar. It doesn't, they complement pretty well. So remember when we put the donkeys, everybody ran in a different directions because my cows and horses never seen a donkey. So the donkeys got lost for a couple of months, and then they came back from the mountain range, and then they bonded. So they're okay now.
Thank you so
Thank you,
much,
folks.
Alejandro.